Hey everyone, Scott here from Swift Canoe and Kayak. We are here at the Fabled cabin with Shawn James from My Self Reliance. Shawn has been generous enough to sit down with us. We're going to have a cup of coffee here. We're sitting by the fire with Callie here, and we're going to talk about the outdoors, life, canoeing, and some of his adventures and some of his stories. So I'm going to dive right in. I know we got a cup of coffee to have and a dog to play fetch with.
And we need it. What is it, first week of October, and it's like 3 degrees or something like that.
Yeah, it's a little chilly right now. I was just saying, these guys, you can see your breath right now, which is, I think, is the first time this year.
Yeah, it was 30 yesterday.
Yeah, are we peak colors right now?
I really think it is. Actually, I got some awesome drone footage this morning out here and over a couple of creeks and everything, and it looks like it's peak. A lot of them are starting to drop, actually.
Yeah, on the drive out here, we had the cameras out already because we were just driving by so much nice terrain with all that color, and you only get it for a week or two every year up here, so get it while you can.
Yeah.
But let's dive right into it, Shawn. I got a lot of questions that I want to ask you. I know all of Shawn's followers are pretty devoted and want to hear more. And I'm privileged enough to know Shawn, have the chance to come here and hear a little bit more about his story. So for any of your viewers who don't know, I'm really curious to hear about even just the origin story for you. I mean, really, I know from having known you for a couple years, you had kind of a previous life. You worked in business for a lot of years. What was the impetus for you to switch careers, if you will, and kind of transition into living this lifestyle?
You know, it's fun. Before I answer that question, the chagas, we got chaga brewing on the fire here, and I see it boiling over, so I'm going to take that off quickly while we're talking here. So this is chaga fungus we were talking about. It get to harvest it from all the birch trees around here. I got jars and jars of it in this form, and really healthy, but I like adding it to the coffee, so if you don't mind that, well.
Absolutely. I think it'll be pretty potent, and that'll be good. It'll keep us warm this afternoon.
Yeah, so, I mean, how far back do we want to go?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think I met you originally. You were just starting out with the channel, and you were a customer of Swift's, and I believe I met you at a trade show, actually. And that was when you bought your first solo canoe from us. And as I remember it then, I mean, you were just, I'm not even sure that you had this property yet.
No, I wouldn't have, for sure. I think I bought a Swift canoe at least a year, maybe a year and a half before starting buying this land and starting the cabin.
So at that time when you were in the market for buying a canoe and starting to do more of this type of thing, it sounds like you're in the kind of the transition, moving from your previous business work into this. So how did that all come to fruition?
So I document, I'm a pretty open guy, and so I've documented a lot of this on my channel where I talk openly about my years in business, but also the business failure that I had, which, I know now that it's just a function of doing business and putting putting it all out there and putting it on the line. Ultimately, you're going to end up with some successes and some failures. So I had a significant business failure that put me way in debt. Personally, as sort of a guarantor for the business. So that hurt, and then I started looking at my life thinking, well, I got myself into that position. I could blame the market, which is bad. It was after the financial crisis in 2008 and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I got too close to the line. It's like playing Monopoly. You're just buying every property until you have no money left if you land on somebody else's property. I did that. And the pressure, I had 2 young kids. My girls are 20 and 19 now, and a wife, and a lot of responsibility. So to be that bold and I think irresponsible, it just caught up to me, and I realized this is not the life I want to live anymore. I want to get back to the simple life and back to the outdoors, spending way more time in the outdoors than I was. And I've raised my girls, taking them camping and doing all that stuff like most Canadians, I think, but I just wasn't as fully immersed into it, and I did have an office even in Toronto for a while there, and just so not me. If you see some of the beginnings of one of my longest videos where I'm in the city and then I transition to this, and you'll see people see me in that suit, and
I was going to say, I remember the suit.
Yeah, look so out of character, but that was me for 20 years. So to get back to this, I built a cabin when I was younger, and I canoed and fished and did all that outdoor stuff then before I got married and got away from it, and I had to come back to it. So I had this opportunity to shut it all down, shut all the business life down and simplify. And I went from growing up paddling canoes, and the cheapest basically
cheapest,
scrap.
heaviest ones.
Yeah, where the little what's the little aluminum one with the foam pads on it.
The Grumman?
No, it's really thin aluminum.
Sports power?
Yeah. Yeah, and you just lean on it the wrong way, and it finally did snow collapse.
Yep.
But I went from that to going up to like a 15-foot boat with a 15 horsepower motor on it, and then went up to a boat with a 90 on it, and then I got a 35-foot boat with two 375 horsepower engines. And as I did that, trying to sort of keep up with the Jones and get out there and see more of bigger water, I was losing the connection to the water. And part of this simplification was getting rid of all that stuff and getting back to a canoe, getting back to hand tools and hand building a cabin. Just got me right back into where I felt I naturally needed to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like, I mean, from what I know of you, and then from having watched a lot of your videos as well, I mean, it sounds like this lifestyle was always part of your life, and more so in the periphery, for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And then you had the opportunity, or took the opportunity, to kind of bring it to the forefront. And from what I know of you, and it's very obvious in your videos, is that you seem to really feed on kind of the connection to nature. And that's something that you've talked about a lot as being something that's, I don't know if centers you is the right word, but having, built this cabin and all this stuff, it's something that's the lifestyle that you really wanted to come back to, and looks like you feel most comfortable with. So the story of this property, the short version being, I mean, as you were making that transition, I mean, I know you were looking for a particular, type of land and type of area. How did this property come to be?
Well, it's interesting. So I had first property I actually bought when I was 17. Just working hard at doing construction for 2 summers, 16 and 17. Bought this property on Whitestone Lake, just south of here, or back between where I grew up in Newmarket and here, I guess, better description of it. And normal township, so you have to follow building codes and all that stuff. So built a little cabin back in the woods where nobody could see it, and kind of got away with it for years. But when I went through that financial hardship, I had to get rid of that property. So I was without for a number of years. And when we started looking again, well, I really want to build a cabin. I don't want to be restricted. So then I looked into the building codes to realize you have to build a minimum square footage, and you have to use all modern materials.
Permits.
Yeah. The cost of permits, I think it's like $10,000 development fee in the area, especially where the old cabin was. So I didn't want to go through all that. To me, going back to nature and back to simple things was also, it's called My Self Reliance for a reason. And see, that's the chaga. See how black that is on its own?
Oh, jeez. That's going to be good. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, so going back to simplifying and being more self-reliant also meant because I'm going to do things sort of outside of society's norms and not follow building codes, for example, build a small structure instead of what's mandated as a bigger, more modern thing. I had to find an unorganized township. So I happen to be in an unorganized township that's still reasonable distance to major centers, because I'm still somewhat reliant on the system. I still have to buy a lot of my food and things like that. So this was a great central location to be able to do whatever I want without oversight by a municipal government, but also to be able to access the areas that I love so much. But Algonquin Park nearby, Killarney, Georgian Bay, Muskoka, Parry Sound, Temagami. I just love this area of Ontario, and I have traveled around doing other outdoor stuff around the world. Just came back from spending a couple of weeks in Alaska this August, and I love this area. I come back to this, and this is what I.
Well, even when we were talking before the cameras were rolling, just what's on this property, just in terms of wildlife and resources.
Well, I might.
Yeah, I don't know if the mics are picking that up right now.
This is why I love it. Oh yeah, there they are. Oh, they're migrating already. Those aren't locals.
Wow, that's a lot too.
Yeah. So that's a reminder that winter's coming.
I don't know, is that a good sight or a bad sight?
Yeah.
Like, depending on how winter's going to be coming. It sounds like we're getting snow this winter. But
it's interesting watching that. So that's part of what I love about this land is that geese, ducks. I've got a stream that runs around the property, runs back behind the cabin where I get my drinking, bathing, and cleaning water from. If it's not from the rainwater, I have deer and moose and bear. On my trail camera this week, there's a wolf that's been hanging out even during the day down here.
Yeah, right next to the cabin.
Yeah, like literally you can sit on the porch. It's part of why we decided I built the porch on this side of the cabin because that's facing west. You get to watch the sun down and see the wildlife that come across this beaver dam down here.
Very cool, very cool. Now that makes me think of something immediately. Once you having talked about some of your business dealings, and it sounds like there might have been like a bit of almost a burnout involved with doing that. Do you feel a little bit rebellious in nature, that part of seeking to do this is a little bit of a rebellion against having to abide by all those rules and the building codes and the bureaucracy? Is there some aspects of that drives you a little bit, that being able to do that is always a motivator to keep living this lifestyle?
I'm learning a lot about myself and about life doing this. So it's been 2.5 years since I broke ground. And while it is, I do call it My Self Reliance, and I try to be as self-reliant as possible, I've realized that I have a much greater appreciation for our history, for the people that came before us, creating the opportunities that we have. So I'm not anti-society. I am more of a loner by nature, however I do like people too, and I do spend a lot of time with friends and family. But I just feel like I think it's my responsibility, and I really think it's everybody's responsibility, to be the best person each of us can be and be as self-reliant as we possibly can, so we're not a burden on everyone else around us. The more I learn about taking care of myself, the more I'm in a position to help others. And that's what I love about YouTube. But this was not a thing. I mean, this is recent. I just started YouTube myself 3.5 years ago.
Well, that's where I was going to be headed next for this conversation. And one of the things, I was fortunate enough is building the longhouse was something that, I was privileged enough to come up here and participate in that a little bit. And like you said, the ability to kind of, build friendships and build relationships with people who support and endorse this lifestyle. That's something that I think comes through with you, that you're very passionate about spreading that goodwill and those skills. And then I was privileged, to participate in that and learn along the way. Hanging out with guys like you and the Baird brothers especially, and Doug. You can't help but learn, absolutely. And that's something that, YouTube I think opens up the door for people to see things that they wouldn't see. To see what's possible out there when you're experiencing the outdoors. And that brings me to the whole YouTube thing. Because like I said, when I met you, you were just starting out. You didn't have this property.
I probably had 4,500 maybe subscribers at the time.
Was that always the goal
No.
in doing this? How did becoming a quote-unquote YouTuber develop?
Yeah, YouTuber is a funny thing, especially with teenage daughters looking on their father playing in the woods and filming himself doing it when I had 1,000 subscribers. I'm just a weird dad that they don't talk about.
They probably don't say that anymore, though, right?
No, they're proud of that because that's the generation, they grew up with that, where we didn't. And it is a little odd for somebody like myself. I'm 49. It's not a young person. I'm not a young person on YouTube. But when I started the channel, I didn't know it was something you could. First of all, it wasn't a career option. It was something you just do to share your experiences. And it really goes back to the canoe. Actually, when I decided I wanted to get rid of my power boats and be back into canoeing, I did a lot of research and ended up on some forums, including My Canadian Canoe Routes and Algonquin Adventures. And through reading other people's trip reports, and saw some of them had videos associated with them, like Larry Hyatt was one I started watching back then, and thought, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna, first of all, thank you for all your advice. I ended up buying a Swift canoe because I realized that they're the best, and that's not endorsement.
I appreciate that, though.
Yeah, it's just the way it was. It was the perfect canoe for me. But just prior to buying that, I actually bought a canoe, a cedar and canvas canoe, this beautiful green one, because I wanted to have something that I could repair myself. I could go and I could literally split the cedar ribs from the forest, from a tree, and repair that thing.
Well, I mean, I think that's very understandable too. I mean, given the skill set that you have and you've developed, I mean, that's self-reliance.
Yes.
You know, and of course that makes perfect sense for someone like you to have that, and us having the opportunity to help you get, you know, some lighter weight boats
Yeah.
and some things that also benefit your lifestyle as well. Is you know, there's a balance there.
Well, that's
and I
fine
really
balance.
can't imagine you not also having a cedar canvas canoe. It's,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
fitting,
Yeah.
right? And
yeah.
so
and eventually a birch bark canoe. That'll be probably one of my projects next year. But
yeah.
that's where it started. It was okay. I'm going to start sharing video. I wrote a trip report and actually won that year's trip report thing on Algonquin Adventures forum and won a $100 gift certificate from Algonquin Outfitters, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, no kidding.
That was my first thing. Well, this is cool. I can do this, and I can actually get some gear to help cover my costs. So,
and that's how it'll be.
Golly,
Golly,
you're okay. Come here, you.
Time for fetch.
So yeah, I went from there. It was always just something I'm going to share with other people, and then it was like, okay, I'm starting to build up an audience. Does this mean that maybe I should not go back to work and I should try to find a way to monetize this lifestyle? People are interested in what I'm doing, and I'm interested in doing it. It is my passion, so I can do it a lot, full time, because business took a lot of my time. It wasn't my passion, so it's not something I wanted to stay up till midnight doing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I never knew that you becoming a YouTuber, that wasn't, part of the plan. It just sort of developed into something like that.
I didn't even know you could monetize a video. I did it for a year and a half before I met Joe. It was on YouTube, and he's like, "Why don't you have like ads on your video?" What do you mean?
You can make money doing this?
Yeah. So it wasn't intentional at all, and still even until a year and a half. Well, until I started the cabin, probably 6 months later, and started getting pretty big views and a lot of subscribers. All of a sudden, that I realized it's a little bit of money coming in, and I'm getting some gear. I could probably just focus on doing this, and so I can do it fully, passionately, and properly. It's like anything in life. You don't put all of your heart into it, and you don't get to. Typically, you don't get success, or you don't get to enjoy the full benefit of it.
Well, and that's something that I know you've mentioned in your videos and as part of who you are, and I think that obviously resonates with people, and I think that comes through in your videos, absolutely. I'm curious, as YouTube you were kind of developing, and it's starting to gain an audience. Was there a particular moment or video or time when it started to gain traction? Was there a turning point in that where it was then decided that this is the thing, this is going to be the focus of my efforts here?
Probably 2 years ago now, before, maybe right at the beginning when I bought the land, I actually had drawn up a little business plan. Okay, how can I make money in the outdoor stuff? So I had on there guiding, I had developing websites for other outdoor-minded people, because I learned quite a bit about making websites when I first started this brand. And what else? A little bit. I think I thought I could make a little bit of money from YouTube and a couple of other things, and that was the case. I actually got an opportunity to start writing articles for Ontario Tourism, and selling photographs to some brands like Tilly, who I'm not doing anything with them right now, but they were paying for photographs. So between selling photographs, getting paid for articles for Canoe magazines and some outdoor magazines, Ontario Tourism. That was the first monetization, actually, of the outdoor brand or whatever it is.
Well, what's the old saying? If you're doing what you love, you never work a day in your life,
exactly.
sort of thing. So.
And that was enough for me. So then, but honestly, until I started the cabin, the canoe stuff, the camping, the outdoor stuff, there's a lot of people doing that and doing it well and doing it better than me. And it took doing something unique like this for YouTube to actually pay attention, or the audience on YouTube to start paying attention.
Well, I've never ceased to be amazed, and I noticed that you saw it as well, that George Takei's Facebook page shared your cabin video, the time lapse, which has gone around so many times. And seeing that, I think probably for you and for me, from knowing you, seeing that when I'm just going about my life doing outdoors related things, that it starts popping up, and then you realize that that's something that so many people have resonated with. Now, backing up a little bit, you've reached this level now. It's something that you are still doing a lot of, but obviously, a lot of your youth and your skill set, it started at a young age. So tell us a little bit about, as when you were a kid, was canoe tripping always something that you guys did as a family?
No.
Did that develop, into adulthood? When did it all start?
Yeah, well, that's what's probably a little unusual, and this kind of, to me, speaks to the innate, our natural drive to do the outdoor stuff. I grew up in Newmarket, small town at the time, probably 50,000 by the time I was a teenager. But we lived right on the edge of town, and there was farm fields at the end of the road, small forest and farm fields. Yeah, they'll throw it again. So really, one of my sisters in particular, we would go camping as a family. So it's not like I was raised totally not in the outdoors. So we did go camping, and my grandparents had a trailer up on Georgian Bay and then on Pigeon Lake for a while. So we'd visit them. But I don't know what fueled the passion I had for the outdoors, other than the fact that we'd walk down to the forest at the end of the street after school every day, and I was just learning about catch snakes and keep them as pets in the terrarium in the house, and fishing little streams for chub, and just getting out there. And then my mother bought me a book, Two Little Savages by Ernest Thompson Seton, who was actually one of the founders of the Boy Scouts of America, with somebody down in the state, Powell, I think. So that's back in, the 40s? Golly. This is what my day is comprised of. A little bit of building and a lot of throwing that to Cali. So this book was, the guy happened to be North Toronto when Toronto was nothing. Like, this is almost like a town. But anyway, all these traditional First Nation skills. And they were building little shanties too, and sleeping in these shanties. And the story was about two boys and going out in the woods and doing that. So I would go out there and recreate these things. And then my another friend that was kind of like that too started coming out with me. So we were building shelters and sleeping in them by like 10, 11 years old.
Really?
Even in the winter.
That's young.
And the parents
Very
letting
young.
us to do that, yeah.
Well, it's a different time, right? So,
Totally.
I'm a few years younger than you, but same thing. When we grew up, it was, when you got home from school, kind of, it was, you can just go be outdoors and come back when it's dark. And we lived next to the forest, and it's just conservation area, and that's where you went, and you did all those things and built tree forts and plant trees and so on. So I can definitely relate to growing up that way.
Yeah.
This skill set that you utilize here, not even just the hunting or the canoeing, the building skills that you've acquired, is that something that you developed in your business ventures, or have you kind of done like trial by fire and learned as you started building everything that's on this property?
Well, people give me too much credit for my building skills. I do have a construction background, so when I was 16, 17, 18, during the summers, I did commercial roofing. It's totally unrelated to this, but it probably taught me to work hard, and taught me how to do simple things that I guess I took for granted, like using measuring tape and a hammer. And then I went into a sheet metal trade. I was a sheet metal journeyman, an apprentice actually. 8 years ended up being total, 21 to 22. Well, again, nothing to do with woodworking, but I learned how to use tools, measure, and I learned about building codes. And then I had a commercial roofing company for a number of years. I got into the office in my first roofing company, which led to me owning one. And I've learned a lot about structural engineer, waterproofing, and how a building goes together. So yeah, I definitely had that skill set, I guess, from that, but not hands-on.
Yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like you've taken all of those skills, the outdoor skills and the building skills, and then really kind of found a perfect way to utilize them as a lifestyle, which is ideal. You took everything that you learned, and you're using all of it now today. So
well, there's lots of, you can look back in your life, and I've done this, thinking, well, if I only had done this instead of that, and how many ways would you change your life? But it all came together in my case, and I think for most people, where you end up with these skills that you end up applying in different ways, or they come together. So it's life experiences that bring you. And I think my 50s are going to be the best decade of my life. When you're young, you think, I don't want to be 30 or 40 or 50, and you have this arbitrary number that seems to be so old that you're no longer functioning.
Can't even envision it,
Yeah. But what you realize as you get to this age, not only do you have this, you're actually looking really annoyed. So I realized getting to this age that all these decades of experience that you accumulate become very valuable. And if you take care of yourself and you get up and do something physical every day, you're actually going to be, I'm in better shape right now for sure than when I was 30 working in an office. I had back problems, I was going to a chiropractor, I was always in pain. Since I started this, I haven't been to a chiropractor once, and I feel great all the time. You have to use it or lose it.
Yeah, what do you think the key is to that? You know, I mean, there's probably, you know, a psychological element to that, you know, but the physical aspect of it. I mean, do you think just being active more than working in an office every day is something that keeps you feeling fresh?
For sure. I see many people younger than me that are, well, myself, I was a good example. I was physically less strong and capable and fit as I am now. And I think I would say mentally more, well, for sure, more burnt out when I was younger working in an office. So yeah, I see older people start to slow down, and as soon as they stop a physical job, for example, if they're a construction worker, they immediately sort of seize up. So there's no question, but I think also the fresh air, it's very meditative working in a forest all the time, and this is what you hear. Right now it's the wind, and we have geese flying over, blue jays and the ravens are flocking. I hear the wolf howl in the back here. Those are the sounds, and until you go to town, until you come back here and hear silence and then go back to town, you don't realize how noisy town is.
It's so true, because every time we come here, and I was saying it, you know, even just to walk in, you can sense it when you come here, and there's something to be said for that. You know, it kind of puts you in a different place, and you know, you leave your cell phone behind, and you forget about your emails waiting for you back at the office, sort of thing. And you're right. I think, you know, it slows you down in some ways, and that allows you to kind of focus on yourself and doing all this work. And one thing I know you've mentioned before in some of your videos is, you know, the amount of labor that you're doing here every day. You eat a ton of food just to keep all those calories going. Like, I'm not small, and I think you out-eat me, and you're still looking trim. So there has to be something said for just, you know, the amount of exercise that this provides you, which again, you know, you're keeping all those things moving, and you're being stimulated mentally and physically every day. You know, it's amazing to see what just 2.5 years has yielded of that lifestyle. Because I was saying on the drive up here that I mean, I'm not here every day. I know you through Swift, but it seems like you had a cabin for a lot longer. To me, anyway, 2.5 years just to see what you built in just those 2.5 years is amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I look at it and think, man, I'm slow. Like, to put it in perspective, so it's one thing to actually do this lifestyle fully if this is all you did and didn't document it. The filming aspect of what I'm doing here, and I feel passionately about filming and documenting and sharing it. So I don't want to give that part up, but it's probably I figure about a third of my time, my productive time is spent filmmaking and editing, maybe more. So filming, I'm constantly, not everybody knows that I film everything myself. I have an email address, and I don't mind giving it out. It's just admin at My Self Reliance, and the assumption is that I have an administrator. Anyway, it's me.
No, I've emailed you. I know you get it.
So all of that takes a lot of time. So that's kind of my downtime. So, but what's so awesome about filming and photographing is you start paying attention to the details. And I don't give myself any credit for being a filmmaker or particularly creative. But people from around the world are commenting on that, the quality of my videos, and the quality of my photos or editing or whatever. I don't see it because I've become so immersed in what I'm doing here, so immersed in nature, that I see everything. Right now, if I was working and I was filming, I'd be stopping and I'd be filming the leaves moving right now because it's catching my eye and I'm finding it beautiful or captivating. So that's given me a new appreciation, I think, for the outdoors and the outdoor lifestyle. You start to look at every detail.
Well, it's very interesting to hear you kind of, you know, put that into perspective, because again, that was one thing that we were talking about in the lead up to me coming out here to do this with you is, you know, I see that artistic element of what you do, and it's something that I find fascinating. And we were actually talking about how we were going to film this and what we wanted to do. And one of the things that we were joking about was, how does Shawn always get all the good footage? Like, you know, you can make breakfast and still remember to catch the helicopters falling from the trees and the sunrise, you know, coming up through, and all of those things. And it sounds like, you know, I think, you know, almost being on cabin time,
Yeah.
you see those things, whereas if you were in city life, those are the things that you would just kind of jump right by.
There's lots of times that I'm in town, or even at somebody's house or something, there's a little, in fact, they don't know there's a noise. You'd be having a conversation, your voices are a little bit elevated, you don't realize until, say, an air conditioner turns off, that there was this noise, that was a stress. And when you get here and you don't have that stress, everybody keeps saying, why don't you have more power, add more solar panels or running water and all this stuff. And a big part of the joy of this is, first of all, working physically to go get that water is actually immersive. You pay attention to it, I pay attention to the water levels here, so everything becomes so in tune with it.
I was gonna say, you're very in touch
Yeah.
with everything that's going
Everything,
on.
the weather. There's not a day that goes by that I don't document the weather and I don't pay attention and get affected by the weather. The noises, the lack of noise when I'm inside the cabin is so, it's hard to even explain until you experience it. And if you're a camper and do any backcountry camping, then you have felt that. But to be able to live that every day and never have, or very rarely have that stress, it allows you to focus on what you're doing, and you then can pay attention to the rustling of the leaves, the toads, the salamanders. Like, I don't know how many millions of salamanders in woods like this. The snakes that have been living under the forest.
Yeah, I saw those in some of your videos.
Yeah. Yeah, like light will come in the cabin. I'm making breakfast and light comes in. The sun rises here, comes in that window there and lights something up in the cabin. I have to turn and get that. So.
Yeah. Now I'm curious, just because when we were talking about coming up here to see you, one of the first things I mentioned was, well, Shawn's really dependent on the weather. And I know that his day's schedule and what he's got planned for the week or the month or so on is very dependent on weather. And obviously that's something that you have to be in tune here. It sounds like, I mean, that dictates your schedule every day.
Everything.
You know, so I guess that prevents you even from scheduling too far in advance.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
does that encourage you to really live day to day?
No,
or
yeah.
just, you know, a couple days in advance and keeps you in the moment?
Yeah. In fact, a couple of days in advance, I've talked about this as far back as when I was writing articles about my canoe trips, is that how many times you hear a bad forecast and then you're sitting at home or you're at work and, you know, by 10 o'clock it clears up and it's the most beautiful day of the month or something. That happens so often in nature. The wind has picked up today. I'm ready to go canoeing in the morning, tomorrow morning, and you know, I hope it dies down. This wind can pick up and affect the day. So then, okay, what do I do differently now? It's fall and I have harvest in mind, and if I can't get out in the canoe, I can go for a walk back here. If it's not fishing game, because the weather's not good and it's rainy, mushrooms are popping up like crazy all around the property, and there's at least 5 or 6 different edible mushrooms that I've identified and harvested and eaten from the land right around here.
So there's never a shortage of things to do.
Yeah,
you know, depending on the weather, you've
yeah.
got a you know, plan A, plan B,
Yeah.
plan C, depending on how it goes.
Well, in video making, and I have been very particular about my schedule on YouTube. That way he doesn't care about the weather. Just on the weather. The schedule, typically what I'll try to do, that's yours there.
Yeah, probably didn't grab one too.
Yeah, you want that one?
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
Perfect.
It's chaga and coffee. Yeah, we'll throw that one this time. Not one more time.
Well, that's good.
There's some maple sugar here too.
That is good. Oh, I drink a
Not
pot.
bad at all. You made it seem like that tea might be pretty intense, but that's good. That's got a good flavor. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah.
So
I like to mix it.
you mentioned you're planning
Oh, yeah.
going canoeing tomorrow.
So just to quickly finish that point, when it's really bad weather, I have to edit I'm down because this is interesting. I've heard this from filmmakers who have contacted me. They understand it. When you film yourself and do the editing, don't put it out there for the world to see and be judged by. It becomes a synergy between the filming and the editing process. So what I film, I typically use in that sequence, in that order. I don't have to try to create a story from a bunch of random footage that was shot with different actors or different locations. I film it all and I put it into my videos in that way. And because I'm editing it, making the final video, I know what I need to film. And I've had to learn that hard way that if I'm going to walk over to the sauna and do some work, you probably want to know where I came from. So then I want to film myself starting here, coming out the door and walking to the sauna.
Now, I think I know what your answer is going to be, but I have to ask, because I'm curious, just for the nature of filming everything that you do. Does that ever feel burdensome or an annoyance to, if you want to spend the day working on the sauna, to stop every couple of minutes and take the time to get that footage, or because it sounds like you're so in tune with what you're doing while you're filming, does it run smoothly? Do you ever get tired of dragging that camera around? Is really what I'm asking.
I mean, to put that, there's a couple of answers to that. And I think the second one's more interesting, but the first one is that my average Friday video, which I've been doing Friday videos for 2.5 years now, and haven't missed a Friday, I don't think, or about 45 minutes average. If I'm lucky, I'll get 1 or 2 other videos out either on my main channel or my second channel that maybe only 10 minutes or even 20 minutes. So you're talking about an hour, maybe 2 hours tops, and actually editing to a final product that I'm putting up on YouTube. And typically, it takes about 3 or 4 hours of footage still, even though I'm very precise and concise with my filming and editing process. It takes that much footage to make, say, a 30-minute video. But how much time is there in the week other than those 2 hours or 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things I don't film. I can't keep filming me cutting firewood or making every meal,
Yeah, well, that's one of those interesting kind of perspective shifts that I think is difficult to interpret when you're a viewer somewhat, because again, having known you a little bit, and I have some idea of how you live and what you do every day, is I'm always impressed, one, with the volume of your output, but I always wonder, that's got to be, that's all day, every day, film, edit, and then to hear you say, well, if I only film for 3 or 4 hours, that's the morning, and that could be a video, which, that one video then, feeds the next 4 or 5 days until the next one, so to speak.
So here's the caveat, though. So people wonder how I have any time to spend with my family. Well, the family time... Is that me? Or? Does sound like a GoPro. Oh, that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's over there.
That's okay.
So the time I spend with my family, first of all, my daughters are off to college, and honestly, don't have much interest in spending time with their old man. So they're not really a factor. My wife spends time here with me, and we spend time together traveling around. And our days, typically, when I'm not here, this is how Callie gets my attention when we're not showing anything. What is it?
Just got your t-shirt.
Is that yours?
Yeah. It's an opportunity to give a shout out to the Muskoka Bros.
Bring it here.
That's my Muskoka Bros t-shirt.
No, bring it. Yeah. Bring it here. Bring it here.
Which I love, by the way. Apparently
Leave it.
Kelly does too. Right, Sean.
Thank you. Yeah, she got my attention.
Well played, Kelly. Well played.
Yeah. And there's the other part of my day.
Yeah, a couple hours filming every day, and then a couple hours playing fetch every day.
Yeah, so the time my wife and I, before I got a camera, like I literally didn't know how to operate computers when I got my first job in the office. Well, likewise, I didn't know how to operate a camera. We didn't even have a decent camera, never mind one that could be operated in manual. So my wife got one first and started taking photographs about 4 years ago.
And she does amazing work, by the
Yeah,
way.
she does.
She takes great photos.
She does, and she's very good at editing. In fact, a lot of my photos she actually edits still because I'm just not good at it, and we've sort of separated where she'll do some photo editing and I do all the video editing. So helpful to have a partner that's supportive, first of all, in life, and also, you know, understands that I need to follow my passion. So she's patient with me. But as a result, anyway, we both love to shoot outdoors, film and photograph. So she'll photograph and I'll film. We'll go out and spend a day. All that footage that you see of the sunsets or the drone or the wildlife, a lot of that is just from us and going out and doing stuff other than right here during my normal building days. So we'll have full days where we'll just go out and shoot wildlife or shoot scenery.
Which is not a bad way to spend date night.
It's awesome, and then it makes my videos that much more enjoyable to watch and for me to watch and edit. So that's a good balance. So that's number one. But so your question was, and the reason I want to answer this because I've been thinking about it lately. A lot of people say, get your head out from behind that camera and just enjoy the scenery in front of you or the people or the event that you're at. To me, it enhances the experience because it makes me pay attention to every single detail. And with these cameras, especially when you're filming rather than photographing, I'm never behind a viewfinder. In fact, even when I haven't used a viewfinder on my cameras in 3 years. I use the screen.
Yeah.
Because I do that, camera's set up at this level, I'm watching what's happening in front of me, so I'm getting to see it almost from two different perspectives.
Well, I'm always amazed whenever I've been around you or some of the other YouTube guys that I've been with, is that you guys don't spend a lot of time anywhere near the camera or touching it. And the first few times I've come out and been with you guys for a few hours, you know, it's a little nerve-wracking for me because, you know, you guys are pros, right? And I don't want to be in anyone's shots, and I don't want to tip over any tripods. And every time I come out here, it's like the cameras aren't there.
Yeah.
You know, and working on the Longhouse, for example, I mean, I think there were 4 or 5 cameras going, and nobody got in any way shots, nobody knocked over a camera, and I'm always amazed that you're right, you're able to still do what you're doing and accomplish the day's task, and you're not spending a ton of time searching for those things.
Even dogs are actually good at it. You'll see the dogs, all of our dogs, and 4 or 5 of them have been here, and they're weaving through the legs of the tripods without knocking them over, right?
Callie went through the tripod earlier today, and I gasped, but nothing happened. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the challenge, but yeah, it's become second nature for us all. And it's challenging because you end up with when you have other people, it's almost impossible not to have somebody either saying something inappropriate or a camera shows up and it kind of takes the magic away from what the viewer gets to see. I don't want to see somebody else's tripod when I'm watching a video.
Well, for sure, right? And it takes away from what this looks like,
right? Yeah.
You know, which is what, you know, a part of what everyone wants to see. Now, you mentioned, you know, that finding that balance with family, and you know, your daughters are growing up and they're away at school and stuff like that. It sounds like, you know, you've got that balance. You know, was there a difficult transition to you starting to be out here, you know, basically full time and making all that work? Because, you know, like you said, there's so many hours in a day, you know, for what you're building out here and all your stuff that goes on outside of here. Do you find yourself running around a lot, or have you guys got it pretty smooth and the motor's kind of running?
It's interesting because back when I first moved into an office from being a tradesman and I was an operations manager for a company, an American company, but a branch office up here. They wanted me to take over Canada or expand the company in the rest of Canada, which meant spending time away from my family. And I actually made the decision as soon as they made that offer to start my own business so that I could stay local. I could continue to have family time. I left money on the table for sure over those business years because I insisted on being home for dinner every night, and which is unheard of. And I had 90-something employees at one time. This wasn't a tiny little business, and that typically means so much dedication that family suffers. I'd never let that happen. So when this opportunity, or this became, I guess, more of an opportunity, first of all, because it's the things that I used to do on the weekend, and now I'm doing it full time. It was almost not extra when I first started this. Mm-hmm. Now, yes, it is, but now my kids are older and gone, so they aren't using or asking for my time or me wanting to be around them.
Yeah.
Like they were in sports, and I never missed a soccer game, so that was a priority. And now it's I have pretty good balance, and I think it's a necessary balance. But it's also one of the reasons we chose this property because it was commutable. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's few hours for me to get back to where we raised our family and where our house was that we're finally getting rid of. But that was the sacrifice. So I was willing to spend more time on the road to get where I wanted to be, but still be within reach where I didn't have to stay for a week every time I went. We looked at properties much further north, and that was it. I'm either there or here.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that speaks to your value set, which is commendable. You know, and there's always something to be said for those family values and keeping those close as they should be. You know, you mentioned before when you were a YouTuber starting out, and you know your kids were teenagers, and it was, you know, dad's a YouTuber, and it's awkward. It's obviously reached a level where, you know, they're older, you're more popular. This is obviously developed into something. Have you found like a renewed interest? Like, you know, the kids interested in coming out here, spending time here? I mean, I know your wife does. I think I've seen some videos. Your daughters come out here a little bit. They spend some of their free time here as well.
Well, now they have boyfriends too. That's one. Now that they're interested in who their father is, right? So, like my daughter working at McDonald's on her first job, and somebody pulls up with a Cabin Life shirt, one of my T-shirts. Yeah.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, and she's proud, but she doesn't want to say anything. Yeah, it's been interesting. So they definitely have a renewed interest in what I'm doing. My daughter wanted to learn how to chop firewood, so that's one of my videos. So yeah, they're seeing that this is viable, and I think they're learning work ethic as well, and they're seeing that you know, I chose to do something that I'm passionate about, and it ended up being successful, even though it wasn't a path I was ever intentionally on to be able to have a YouTube career based on my passion. But ironically, I hit this from a milestone perspective, which I never thought I would hit these numbers or even be interested in numbers. My smaller channel hit 100,000 subscribers yesterday.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And My Self Reliance channel will hit 1 million this weekend, so 3 or 4 days from now.
Yeah, you're about 995.
Yeah, 996 it'll be today. Yeah, so not that I'm paying attention. It's a cool number. I don't know. To me, it's.
Are you gonna do anything to commemorate it?
No. You know what? It's never been about that, and I think that's so cliche to even say it that I don't even want to say it. You know, and I try not to say it on videos, but I do. I don't know, what's the difference between 500,000 and 1 million? Like, to me, it's the fact that many people around the world. So I'm not. One of the things about growing up is that you start to lose your competitive nature and your arrogance and ego and everything else. It's one of the things I've tried purposely to get a handle on, is to start to lose my ego and not look at my success or how much better I am than somebody else at something. So when you take that out of the equation, I'm able to look at this whole experience as, look what I get to share with the world, things that I take for granted. And I've said this to other YouTubers and photographers and stuff. Sometimes it's the red squirrel that we just don't even pay attention to, or the chickadee or the toad or something, means almost nothing to us, but somebody from Malaysia is watching my video, or Australia, or Sweden, or somewhere else. Like, there's no concept. Brazil, all around the world, and they see these things, and it's all fascinating to them. So it kind of opens my eyes to what we have and what I'm able to share.
Well, it's a really interesting perspective, and we were talking about that a little bit on the drive up. Is just you know, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your audience, you know, because there's a lot of facets to what you do. You know, there's obviously the cabin is a big part of it, but the self-reliance aspect, the community building, the longhouse, the canoeing, hunting, fishing, you name it. Your audience, as it's grown, is global, basically. What do you think the key to that universality is? I mean, what is it about what you're doing that really can go beyond just anyone who lives in Ontario or this part of the world? You know, what is it that you're doing that you think reaches those people who are in Malaysia and are watching a video of a red squirrel?
It's funny because hitting these milestones this week is making me reflect. And one of the things I am reflecting on, what is the appeal, but what also is missing in people's lives? And I heard a statistic this week that the video game industry is several times bigger than the movie industry and a few other entertainment industries put together.
Well. Yep.
And that's just shocking. What it shows me is that people want to live vicariously through something else, or live as a different character, or to watch and just participate in something maybe more exciting. I think what's happening, honestly, is that even though we don't admit it to ourselves or we don't have the right perspective, we think that we're hard done by or we've got difficult lives. But if you look at history, we have the easiest time ever, and there's very few things we need to do for ourselves, which, again, back to the basis of My Self Reliance, is even though I didn't have to live simply or didn't have to work physically, I chose to. I quit good opportunities in the corporate world. I could be sitting in a desk right now making really good money. Literally, honestly, could be doing that, and I made this decision. Because the boredom would drive me crazy, and I would be sitting there playing video games or watching something on TV.
Yep. Well, it's interesting. I saw that same statistic, and you're right. I think it speaks to, what people do with their free time, or how free they are to use their free time.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously if you have a homestead like this, there's responsibilities that free up, or responsibilities that take up your free time.
Mm-hmm.
There's work that has to get done before the snow falls.
Yeah.
So your available time gets spent working on the cabin as opposed to playing video games.
With a direct reward.
As well, yeah.
So the difference is that, yes, you can be very busy at work, but it's not the same, or doing whatever, social or entertainment or whatever, but it's not the same as cutting your own firewood and then heating and keeping yourself alive as a direct result of your effort.
Mm-hmm.
I think that connection is part of that missing piece in people's everyday lives. I've got 3 sisters. I have 2 daughters. I'm basically surrounded by women. And I know how tough it is for them to try to make enough money to live on their own, yet that's what they would prefer to do, some of them. And there isn't another time in history where a single woman could live alone and function. And most guys, too, can survive on their own without heavily relying on family, friends, or society. Mm-hmm. And this period in particular in our lives, there's at that point where you could not work and welfare system would keep you alive. Mm-hmm. Even you might complain about your life, but you're being kept alive. And in Canada, we have relatively free healthcare and a lot of other benefits. Pretty affluent society. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's why most of the people of my kids' generation haven't even really worked physically. Mm-hmm. Very little hands-on jobs these days. Mm-hmm. In fact, the trades are dying. Like, you can charge whatever you want to do physical work because nobody wants to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. So that I don't even want to say it's just work ethic. It's just lack of initiative. Whenever somebody does something for you, why would you do it for yourself? And we've created this society where a lot of what we need is actually done for us. We have relatively cheap food, relatively cheap energy. And again, even if you don't think so, compare it to history and compare it to other places in the world. So if you have everything done for you, or life is relatively simple, what motivates you to get up in the morning, or what makes you happy or fulfilled? Mm-hmm. How meaningful are our lives if we have no input, if we don't really have to do anything and we can still survive? Like that's just lack of meaning.
Yeah, and that's fascinating to hear that, especially coming from someone like you who does this and can speak about that from a place of experience. And I'm curious more just to consider more even your audience somewhat. I mean, there's a universal element to that, no matter where you live. Do you find your audience, I'm guessing it's probably pretty diverse, but you get a lot of feedback and you engage a lot with your audience, which I think is something that people enjoy, because it's very cool to hear back from the person that you're viewing if you have a question, or they've obviously read your observation about something. Is your audience... Is there a greater collection of a certain type of people, or location, or age range, or do you find that because you're mentioning, these kind of universal ideals, is your audience a bit of everybody?
That's why I went into a long-winded sidebar there about what I said. I think that's universal. I think it's gotten to the point. So my audience, to answer that question quickly first, 9% is Canadian. Excuse me, roughly. Wow. Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah. About 35 to 40% American. And it's like Australia, Germany, UK, and then down from there. But it's literally every country in the world. And I think it's pretty universal that a lot of people have pretty easy lives. But also a lot of people can't get out and enjoy nature because we're more urban. Mm-hmm. Like more people live in cities now than in the country, so they don't see any of this. Mm-hmm. I would say that probably the most common, maybe even comment I get is something about kind of relaxing at the end of a hard week and just watching my videos and sort of immersing themselves in peace and Zen-like quality, which I try to. My videos have naturally gone in that direction. First of all, as I start to feel it more, and also as I realize that's what people are missing in their lives, just being able to sit back and just enjoy watching somebody else work, or just the quiet, serenity.
How does that feel as a feather in the cap? Because I would, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume, for what you're doing and the ideals that you're pushing forward, to hear back from such a huge portion of your audience, because I see it as well too, as people say, like, the new Shawn James video just uploaded, I know what I'm doing Friday night, this is my peaceful moment to, unwind and relax and stuff. Is that the one of the ultimate compliments that you can get doing something like that? Is that a reflection of that what you're putting out there is coming back
probably
in a positive way? Yeah,
the most offensive ones probably get are when I do talk and they say, "Stop talking, or you're talking too much." I might have said 15 lines in an hour-long video, but I don't take it personally. But I do realize that my videos have changed, and that's why I created a second channel, because I understand that, and I would. If I'm watching YouTube, I'm looking for the same thing. I want to immerse myself in that and not just listen to somebody or see somebody's face. I want to feel like I'm there with the person, or I'm experiencing that same thing. So my videos have naturally gone in that direction on my main channel. But a lot of people also, when I started building the cabin, I started opening up personally, and I ended up speaking a lot about my personal experiences and how I got to where I am in my life. And I ended up with a really big following of people, especially private messaging, but even in the comments, commenting on how I've helped them in some way, some philosophy or something I've shared of my own experiences or my own thoughts. So I feel like I need to continue to do that, and people are reaching out to me continuously now, asking me to start that up again, because I've gone sort of away from that on this channel. So second channel, I do more of that. I want to get back into talking more about my personal experiences and philosophy at the end of my main channel videos for that reason. Because the feedback is, I think to know that you're affecting people, that I get to affect somebody from my little tiny cabin in Canada, of all places, and get to help people or give them an escape, whatever it is, whatever way I'm helping them, that's pretty special. And in fact, I can't think of a thing I'd rather be doing than I can't think of anything more meaningful other than family that I could have in my life right now.
That's very cool, Shawn. And I'm glad to hear you mention that too, because it reminded me of something that I've wanted to ask you about from just having seen your evolution. Is, as I know you, you're a relatively quiet guy. You got a good poker face. And I've watched you develop to opening up more and talking more about your personal life and your, thoughts and beliefs and all that stuff. Was that a difficult transition for you? Was it hard to stand in front of the camera and put that out there? And does it get easier with time?
Somebody asked me this week how long it took me to get comfortable in front of the camera, and I said, I'll let you know when I do. And it's everybody who has bad days, and you wake up feeling differently on different days. And I didn't get a good night's sleep last night, for example, and today I'm a little tired and probably not as I probably wouldn't talk. I wouldn't have filmed a talk in front of the camera probably today. So there's a bit of that, but it took, so probably the best answer for that is that it feels so anonymous at first, especially when you have a small audience. So I'm creating these videos. I'm sure everybody goes through this on YouTube. I'll talk specifically about me. So I'm a pretty quiet guy. I failed high school. I didn't even get my diploma because I couldn't get up in front of the class to teach something or to give a presentation. So I failed English 4 times, 11 twice, 12 twice, never got my diploma.
Really?
Specifically because of my anxiety. I couldn't get up in front of people and talk.
Wow.
So that's how my life went. That's why I became a tradesman, construction. I didn't have to deal with people. So moving into the office was a big deal for me. So when I started YouTube, and I had 100 or 10 people at first watching, then 100, and then 1,000, still anonymous. Over the last year, I've had people reaching out to me randomly that just found me on YouTube, from ex-employees, ex-partners, fairly current business partners I just stopped doing business with when I got out of business. Family that I hadn't talked to in years, friends that I grew up with from like grade school.
Wow.
All these people are reaching out to me. Just watch this. This is awesome. And love that you finally got back to what they even saw in me back then. So
different than English class.
yeah, it's for sure. Even teachers reaching out to me, and now it's not anonymous. So now it's harder because I mean, if you watch my videos, and I have 440 videos or something out on my 2 channels in 3.5 years, and there's not much I haven't talked about. Like it's gotten pretty personal.
You've been pretty thorough. I would agree.
All the way to tearing up over some stories or whatever's going on in my life, and now I've got all these people that knew me personally that I even run into still sometimes. And now they have details you just don't typically share with your friends. So.
Now, living out here and doing this, I mean, it provides you with a big degree of privacy, in that you don't have to interact much if you don't choose to. And we've joked about it a little bit when I've seen you around the shop and stuff, because, people recognize you now when you're out in public. And it's probably a little bit different when you're behind the camera or you're just reading the comments. That's still not a person face to face. And as someone who's, had social anxiety and has worked through that as you've gotten older, do you still have a hard time when someone recognizes you in public? Because it's got to be a little bit weird, And are you getting better at dealing with that?
Yeah, the first time was actually I had a much bigger Facebook account right from the beginning before I had YouTube, and I had somebody when I was paddling away from a portage pass me and turn around and say, hey, they just yelled out my name to see if it was me, so I would respond, and I did. That was the least awkward because there was some distance. Yep. Now it's at the point now where I can't go anywhere. Like every day that I leave the cabin, I run into somebody who's recognized me.
Every day.
Yeah, like my wife and I were out, I think we were in Algonquin a few weeks ago, and pretty disheveled, and we're starving, so we stop in this little hamburger joint on the side of Highway 60 and eat big hamburgers, and they're just dripping everywhere, and like we're both very self-conscious about it, my wife and I, she's very private, and I get an email the next day, well, we were on the picnic table across from you, I didn't want to come up to you, so I get a lot of that where people won't come to me, they just email me afterwards or message.
Do you appreciate that?
Yeah.
Because the concept of a YouTuber and a popular personality through YouTube is a relatively new phenomenon. But you hear about it from athletes or public figures and actors and so on about how you can't go anywhere without getting bugged for a photo, and how much even if you're going to be out in public, I guess it's got to be a bit of a good thing that they still do respect your privacy somewhat. I mean, are you getting many people stopping you and saying, hey, can I get a selfie with Shawn James right now?
Depending where I am. It's some obvious places like Cabela's or something. I'll get people asking for selfies. Got quite a few. So my family's privacy has been important for security reasons as well as for their own privacy. They didn't choose this. So that's why they're typically off camera. So it's been awkward for my wife more than myself to have those things, when we're together and they recognize. But she's also had people come up to her and say, is that person? Then would you mind if I approach them? So she's okay with that.
So she basically runs security for you.
Yeah. But for myself, you know what? I've talked about this in the past too. It's almost a barometer of whether you're being a proper or a good person or not. So I know now, I can't cut somebody off. I can't give somebody the finger in the truck or whatever.
If your truck isn't covered in stickers, let's say My Self Reliance or something like that, it'd be a little bit more obvious.
So I have to be on my best behavior, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing to be judged up to a point. I don't think or know if it'll ever get out of hand, but the way it is right now, I'm actually, I'm proud to have influenced somebody, whether they want to get outdoors more or whether they got something else out of what I've said to them that makes them a fan, if that's what you call somebody, view somebody on YouTube. So I do appreciate it, and I do, I actually encourage people, don't be shy. You can come up and say hi to me. I'm fine with that, because like I said, I've tried so hard in my life to eliminate ego as much as possible. I look at it from not a perspective that, look at me, I'm so popular and these people want to get a picture with me or autograph or whatever. I look at it as, that's nice. Like, it's almost like a friend. And almost everybody I hang around now I've met online.
Yeah, well, I guess true enough. Doug, Joe, all those guys.
Yourself, Joe.
Yeah, true enough.
Everybody. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It's got to be something that takes some getting used to. But I would think if you're doing that and you're out there and you're meeting the public and stuff, for all the things that you've mentioned in the videos, for the I hate to use the term what you preach, but that's not the right word. But the values that you're putting out there about family and hard work and all those things. If you're going to be stopped in public, those are good things to be stopped for. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm sure it's difficult at times when you're in the middle of running 10 errands and somebody stops you. But I would think it's a good thing. That means that people are picking up on a message that I consider to be positive and has a lot of universal appeal. And there are lots of things that more people should adopt. So that's interesting that it's growing to that point now. Yeah. And I'm sure you're still glad that you're a few acres back in the woods here. So
even in Alaska,
no one's knocking or ringing your doorbell.
No, and they're searching. I'm getting those messages, which is why my privacy and my security is an issue. That is the only thing I'm concerned about with that. Somebody just emailed me yesterday. I now know where you grocery shop and where you got your lumber.
They emailed you just to tell you that?
Yeah, another one saying, with Google imaging or whatever, you can look at some of your overhead and actually I know exactly where your cabin is, and that's kind of freaky, right? So I'm hoping it never gets to that point where security, like it's a threat. There's just all kinds of people watching YouTube. It's, they have 140 million views or something on YouTube now, and just that video that you mentioned earlier, the time lapse. Last time I checked on the George Takei and a couple of others that have posted, it was over 200 million views. And who are these people?
Yeah.
And how badly do they want to know where the cabin is?
Well, for sure. I mean, if it's any consolation, you talked about before about kind of there's a disconnect from people who are viewers, and I think that affords them. I think they feel the freedom to say things that they wouldn't say in person, right. And you take a little bit of solace in the fact that hopefully that those are just emails and words and they don't lead to actions. But I mean, you're probably also one of the better insulated people from the risk of that, being here and the skill set that you have and what's available here on the property. I think you're pretty secure, but that's got to be something that you think about and weigh about. And I can't say that I blame you. I mean, this is a place that obviously that you want to protect.
I also want to have, like, part of, if you look around, I've got stuff, like valuable stuff, kind of just around. Personal stuff more than valuable stuff. Most things can be replaced, but there's some personal things here, and to think that somebody could vandalize or steal things that do mean something for me. I don't want to have to lock everything up. I want to live free here. I want to live like I'm in the forest without having, thieves around or people out to malice. I don't know.
So I'm curious, if we're on the subject of kind of the haters, if you will. You're a guy who's pretty, secure in his values and so on. Does the hate or the negativity never bother you? Has it ever gotten to a point where you considered, I should take a step back, or it's, does it ever bring you down? Because the volume that you guys get, just by nature, it's not a reflection of what you put out. It's just, the more popular you are, the more hate that you get. Does that ever weigh on you?
So being able to reflect on everything, because I have so much time. So as I'm working here and it's quiet and I am alone, like some of the comments I get is you weren't alone because there was another dog there in this scene, or so who flew the drone and stuff. Of course, it's not meant that I'm alone all the time. This is what you can do if you do things alone. This is what one person can do alone if they put their mind to it. So everything here was built by me alone, personally. And that...
Do the haters ever weigh on you?
So the haters, because I get to think about what they say, and I do. This is a problem. This is a problem that I don't think all human beings have, but if you're on social media in particular, you get these random anonymous haters. So you have to deal with them. The problem is, my average is about 98.5% positive. So 98.5% thumbs up in this case compared to thumbs down. The comments are probably about the same. So I might get an average of, say, 1,500 comments on a video. 1,450 will be positive and 50 will be maybe even just a little bit critical, and then maybe 5 or 10 that are negative, totally negative. It's natural to focus on those. For some reason in human nature, we focus on that. What I have come to realize as I've grown here and as I hear from so many different people is that typically is a problem they have, not a problem I have, and something I've done.
Yep.
So I start to actually sympathize, and I think that's a good thing. I have empathy and sympathy for, especially empathy for people that are going through something in their lives where they think tearing somebody else down is something they should do, or focusing on the negative. Like I get the odd comment even saying, I loved everything in this video, but you said this one thing, therefore I'm giving you a thumbs down. I'm thinking, okay, so 99% of the video was thumbs up, but you are going to hit thumbs down
Just for that.
because that's your nature to focus on that negative thing. And I've realized how is that a reflection of me? Yeah, even if I did mess up, and I do, only somebody who's malicious or has some kind of deficiency in their own personality would point that out to somebody else or focus on that thing.
That's an interesting approach, and it's something that I think about a little bit too, just in the work that I've done, just because it doesn't matter. Once you put it out in a public forum, you're going to get negativity. And I think that's like a mature way that I think comes from like time and experience to be able to sympathize. Not a lot of people I think get to that level, to be able to take a hateful or a negative comment and not even just ignore it, but also just say, to sympathize, to even if in some instances even reach out, and be willing to offer some type of conversation or what have you to kind of maybe bring them out of that. I can only imagine. I mean, your positivity rate. I mean, that seems very high, honestly, for any YouTuber, because it's such a forum that is so open to promoting negativity. That's interesting that you're able to look at it that way and move past that. I have to change gears on you, Shawn, because I know you got a lot of work to do, and I know it's gonna be dark soon, and you probably got to get the fire going in the cabin. I gotta ask you, we got some customer and some follower questions. Naturally, they're more about canoeing and stuff, but I have to ask you, the most popular question that people sent in to us, which I thought was interesting and maybe hard to answer, so we'll see how it comes across to you, but a lot of people said, what was your first paddling memory? Now, you mentioned some things that you've done as a childhood. Was there a first canoe trip, it doesn't even necessarily have to be canoeing. Was there a first outdoor trip that was the one that you remember from childhood that was, kind of a trigger towards making this a bigger part of your life?
So many little things in the outdoors, but I think water is probably, it's been a central figure in my life. So, like I said, my grandparents had a trailer in Honey Harbor, southern Georgian Bay. And that's where I learned to fish off the dock there. And I've got a picture of my sister and I. I'm 4 and I might be 5, let's say, and she's 3.5 or something. We're both holding a bass.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. And my life has sort of revolved around Georgian Bay since that time. But the first, I went to day camps when I was young. My mother, even though we weren't wealthy at all, had some tough times. My mother prioritized us kids and giving us experiences. So we often went to day camps or overnight camps even. Hockey camp, I was big into sports actually, not to see outdoors, hockey and soccer. And I learned how to canoe and kayak. In fact, cool experience when I was 12 is I actually gave Wayne Gretzky a demonstration on how to do an Eskimo roll on a canoe.
Really?
Or a kayak, yeah.
How did that come about?
Halliburton Hockey Haven. Yeah, I went there 2 years, and my mother, Gretzky had only been in the league for a year, I guess, and up and comer, but already breaking records, and she made sure I was at Halliburton Hockey Haven for that week that he was going to be visiting.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure enough, he arrived and he came down to the water just as I was learning how to do an Eskimo roll. So he said, "That's awesome. Never done that. Can you show me how to do that?"
So did the Gretz master the Eskimo roll because
No.
of you?
No, we got called to something else, and we went and started playing soccer, and we were playing soccer with him, and a kid broke his leg right in front of him.
Really?
Yeah.
It wasn't the Gretz that did it, I
No,
know.
it wasn't. But that was cool. That's a cool, memorable experience about being on the water. And then after, you know, just dabbling in canoeing and kayaking, when I was 16, my three buddies and I canoed from 6 Mile Lake to the Gibson McDonald Georgian Bay loop over 6 or 7 days. So we took our time, but we thought we could live off the land, so we barely brought any food. And what we did bring was these boil in the bag magic pantry, I think they were, foil, like a full lasagna, so it weighed like 2 pounds each meal. So, and then we were like fighting over like catching a sunfish and who was going to eat it kind of thing by the end of the trip. Eating duck eggs. Like,
oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
How long was this trip for?
6 or 7 days.
6, yeah.
Probably 7 days.
And you made it right to the end?
Yeah, we had to. It was a loop, and we didn't have our driver's license, or we didn't have vehicles, so we got dropped off. I think we might have been 15, actually. And then the following year, we did the French River Loop, a 7-day trip, and had an awesome time doing that. So.
I imagine everyone lost a few pounds on both of those
trips.
trips.
Oh, yeah. And then we lost all of our gear the second last day on the French River trip, lining up rapids. Swamp both canoes, and everything went, all the 2 little cameras and all our frying pan fluid, everything.
Well, I was going to ask you, I was going to get to the best canoe tripping story or event, but that leads me to, what was the worst one? I mean, if you're 15 years old and you lose a canoe on the French River and all of your gear, as an adult man, I've been on solo trips and had a couple of close calls, and I carried that memory home with me.
Yeah.
That's when you're doing that. That's before cell phones. That's before GPS. That's helps not necessarily around the corner, sort of thing. What was that the worst canoe tripping experience you had, or the scariest one?
We didn't think of it as bad. Like it was. Yeah, you have your moments, but when you're with a bunch of guys, 3 good friends, like you're still friends with them actually. Yeah, there isn't a bad one. I don't know. Like it's always been about. I don't know. I was so used to, like I said, like by 12, I was sleeping in with no proper gear, sleeping in winter shelters that we built, like literally pieces of split rail fence that we tore apart from the farmer's field and made a little shelter out of it and slept in it.
Very
minus
cool.
20. So there's no hardship was never an issue for me. I never felt like it was hard.
Yeah.
So I don't even think I have like that was probably the worst event that happened on the canoe trip. But like I said, when I was 17, I bought a property and had a little tin aluminum boat and had a couple of canoes I would stash on back lakes. I'd have to portage to and go up little creeks and stuff. And we were back there hunting and fishing and kind of living. A lot of time it was me alone, living sort of off the land even back then. So
you started young, with those experiences. And it's interesting, that there's always some like youthful naivety about, you're impervious to getting hurt when you do these things, and it's funny. I hear stories from like my father or grandfather about mishaps in the bush, hunting trips that went awry and gear breaking down and being really far away from a resolution. And I always ask the question is, was it scary or was that a bad experience? And the answer is almost always no, it wasn't. Because we didn't think that it was a big deal.
Right.
We didn't think that it was that dangerous. And looking back on it,
yeah,
it
right.
was.
Yeah.
But at the time, if you're with your 2 best buddies and you tip a canoe or what have you, that's just that's a reason to have more adventure. You know what I mean?
Well, there's some things that stand out. When I was 18, winter camping, brought my girlfriend's younger brother, so he's probably like 14, and we went out to Whitestone Lake because I had the island property, and we went back in the woods. I brought a compound bow. It was literally minus 32 or something, and I decided we're going to build a Quincy side of the lake, and we're going to catch fish and shoot rabbits with this bow for food, which of course none of that happened. I spent like an hour with a hatchet chipping a hole in the ice. Didn't know because I'm young that you can't chip like this, so the last axe went through, filled the hole up with water.
Yeah, and then you couldn't get a line through.
Yeah, it was 36 inches, the ice. So I did a whole nother hole, spent an hour doing that, brought it down properly and knocked it out with a stick. was a foot and a half of water underneath.
Oh, jeez.
So couldn't fish. We were soaking wet from building this Quincy, and all I had was a canvas overalls on, which was so totally wet.
Yep.
But from emptying out the snow out of the Quincy, so then we go to bed in there, and I had this little thin tarp that was so cold it shattered into little pieces.
Oh, jeez.
So we're sleeping on the snow.
No fire.
Fire, we kept. I built it on top of snow that was that deep, so it just kept putting itself out as it melted down.
As it went down.
So I actually could have died that night, and this kid could have died, but that was for sure the closest I've ever come to.
So you did know in that moment that it was pretty bad.
I was starting, yeah.
Well, that leads me to my next question, and this is almost depends on the season here. That was a winter camping story, but there's always critical pieces of gear that everyone, you can't leave without it. The common one you hear is an axe. Let's start with winter. What are the key pieces of gear that you gotta bring?
I have a pretty popular video from before I started the cabin called Camping in a Cold November Rain or something like that. And I go out with a canoe, cedar and canvas canoe, shotgun, and dry pants. And I'm not sure what I had on for a jacket. I slept under the canoe. It poured rain. It was November. It was probably close to freezing, and just slept under that and had a fire, and it was completely fine. So it ends up, and I knew that it's going into it. It was going to come down to the clothing that was on my body, and I've found that more than anything in any season, summer, winter, whatever, especially the shoulder seasons, is that having the proper gear on your body, clothing-wise, more important than anything. You need to be able to start a fire, because I have had dumps. Well, actually, I've never spilled a canoe. I've never had never solo I've ever flipped a canoe. I'm trying to think if I did even as a teenager. I don't think so. Anyway, I've never had.
Keep going.
Yeah, so I've never had that issue, but I've always been prepared for it. So you'll see me all summer long here working in long sleeve, which looks completely unnatural. And then fall came over the last month. I've been wearing short sleeves, even though it's way colder than it was in the summer. Well, it comes down to dealing with bugs. So that time of year, most of the summer, I'm wearing full clothing. I never wear shorts anymore in the woods, even on a canoe trip, because I don't want to get burnt, I don't want to get bitten, I don't want to get scratched. So it comes down to the clothing. And then if you do dump, you need to be able to start a fire. In the case of a canoe trip, or in the winter, you need to be able to start a fire to keep yourself warm. So my coldest overnight winter camping, no tent, is like minus 40, that minus 42 night we had in Algonquin a couple of years ago. I was out in that.
Jeez.
With just a fire and a sleeping bag. So it's clothing first, fire starting ability with probably, if you can, multiple ways of starting a fire. You can see me use a flint here lately, fire steel, and then matches and lighter. I would have all of those in different parts of my body. And then the knife axe thing, there's been lots of times I don't open up or take a knife out or an axe on a trip, or a saw even, because take a look around. Even starting this fire right now, even though I've been here for 2.5 years, I'm still getting twigs and branches from right around the cabin, never mind back in the woods. There's always firewood here.
Yep.
So wood processing is, it's low on the list here in Ontario.
Wow, it's funny. I've learned something just from sitting here, because you're dressed well, and I'm sitting here shivering.
I'm starting to shiver too, to be honest.
So I'm not the only one who's cold, because I'm learning. I'm going to have to get some of your gear. As far as with canoe tripping goes, obviously, yes. I mean, fire starting is key, being able to source wood, staying dry, if you're going to get wet, all those things. You're a little bit more of a traditional gear kind of guy. A lot of people getting into canoe tripping, and especially solo tripping, has seen a big trend in people who are just starting it and don't know. As far as, gear, packing gear, are you the traditional, the canvas bag, do you... 1 bag, 2 bags. I don't envision you with a blue barrel for food. No. It's just, that doesn't seem like your style. So what's your normal gear setup when you're solo canoe tripping?
I'm really into distance, typically, because I like to get back to where the fishing game is. That's always been my thing. Before Google, before satellite imagery. I used to go to the Ministry of Natural Resources offices and pour over the maps with a sketch of a thing, and I would mark out where the crown land spots were on my own map. I'd order the satellite photos, before, aerial photos when they became available. So I was always looking for those places way off the beaten track. You can't carry a lot of gear into those. So I've been fairly traditional in my gear, but more than that, I'd try to go minimal. Now with this lightweight equipment, got my beautiful cedar and canvas canoe. I've got my canvas packs and everything. But honestly, if I'm going to go distance, I want to have my 34-pound carbon canoe. I want to have one pack, never have two packs. I've only gone on one canoe trip probably in the last 10 years that I've had more than one pack, and I single carry everything. And that's the secret. I can't. Well, Baird's came out with me, and if you've seen their canoe trips, they're like,
I don't know how they do it.
They're like triple portage.
Yeah, they can get more in a canoe than anyone I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, the dog's like sitting on above the gunnels, like on top of the gear.
Always. Now, that all comes from experience, and as someone who canoe trips and stuff, I'm always guilty of bringing too much. Out of risk of always telling myself it's better to have it than not need it. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Is there any particular piece of gear or moment that you remember, that taught you to pare down to that single pack or those single carries? I've been guilty of carrying, too big of an axe and realizing I'm lugging this thing around and I didn't have to. That ever happened to you? It must have.
Some gear, it starts. Well, what always happens is that the gear that you're not using ends up on the bottom of the pack. Whether it started there or not, it ends up by the end of the week at the bottom of that pack. I have this little blue towel, one of those micro towels, full size, that has been sitting in the bottom of my pack forever, and finally I just used it to protect the bottom of the canoe the other day, and that was the first time it's been out. And it's a funny thing, you would think a towel would be fairly common, but if it's warm enough to swim, it's typically warm enough to dry off without a towel.
Yeah, sure enough, though.
So things like that have slowly just been eliminated from my pack, and an axe was never something I thought was necessary. First of all, they are dangerous. In fact, all the experience I have, I actually caught myself when the guys were here, and the next morning after a long night of carousing with the guys.
Coffee only?
Yeah. And I ended up putting an axe in my finger here, and it's still not healed properly. That was back when the guys came up the first time.
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure if you were here, that you had left the night before.
Yeah.
It was the April one, anyway.
Yeah, I think I might have come the second one, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
So wait, just splitting kindling?
Yeah, just to get kettle going in the morning. Yeah, so it can happen to anybody, and an axe is one of the more dangerous things to use, and a knife is not far behind it. So unless you're experienced with it, on a solo trip, I'd try to find a way to avoid using those things as much as possible, but certainly don't carry an axe. If anything, fire is important, so if you don't know the area that you're going into, a little folding saw and maybe a knife, if you know how to split kindling and stuff with it, is enough.
Well, that was going to be my next question was, do you carry a saw? Because depending on where you go, and you're the type to go deeper into crown land where, all the firewood within 100 meters of every campsite hasn't been totally barren, you know what I mean? And you're looking at tundra when you get to a campsite in some places, you know what I mean?
For sure.
So yeah, it sounds like, the saw is always, is worth having,
What's good for
today's lightweight ones.
Well, for getting into, or even portages, like I always start off the year with the canoe trip right at ice out, essentially. So a lot of the portages, even in Algonquin, I'm on there first. And there's trees down, so a saw is almost essential at that time of year to cut your way through the portages, or to be respectful to people following you, so you can kind of clear a path. But some things you have to, if you're solo, you have to accept the fact that you have to take less risks than a party. So a lot of times I don't clear portages because I could get hurt doing that, and I'm alone. I'll wait for the group that's coming in behind me to do that.
Well, I'm sure that's a mindset too that's probably a little bit more refined with you because of your lifestyle. Even just being here. You can't risk doing something with a large piece of machinery or going up on a dangerous angle on the ladder. Because the consequences are too big. And that's one thing that we see a lot. With people starting to get into canoe tripping, and especially there being a big increase in solo trippers is us having some responsibility, making sure that they're prepared as well. You know, and there are some lessons that you should learn, you know, about if you carry 2 packs and you realize how much it sucks, you know, to learn to pare down your gear, but also just being safe. And that comes with time and experience. One of the things that we were talking about, I think, before the cameras were rolling, is that you never get out in your canoe as much as you'd like to. I mean, every fall, I always say, I wish I would have squeezed one more in here on this weekend or that weekend. We're getting to be, you know, in the fall. It sounds like you're going canoeing tomorrow. Maybe by the sounds of things, you got a few more in this fall. Any big trips planned? I mean, you went to Alaska. I know you managed to fit in some canoeing there. Are there any canoe tripping adventures lined up for you?
I have nothing planned, but as you mentioned, I don't plan too far in advance much. For this year, it'll just be day trips. I've probably got 3 or 4 at least left, maybe more than that even, because it is harvest season, and I like to get out on the water for that. Next year, I'm looking at, I don't know, I did Woodland Caribou a couple of years ago now, and I've got my eye on some of the other big parks north. And
is that the new trend, Northern Ontario? I see a lot of guys, obviously, that we, you know, do business with and so on. There's a bit of a migration with the more seasoned trippers going up there. What's the appeal? Is it because it's a little bit more isolated, different terrain?
I think Jim Baird and I talked about this. There's Canoeists, because this is what's a little bit different than me, and I didn't realize this until I kind of started hanging around more of the Algonquin crowd, is that there's Canoeists and then there's outdoorsmen, and they're not necessarily the same people.
Yep.
So Jim said the same thing I do. The canoe has always been a tool to get somewhere for a reason, not the
It was like a means to an end?
Yeah,
so
pretty much, yeah. The canoe is the ideal vessel for an Ontario sportsman to be able to access fishing game.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talked about, even when I had a property where I had my cabin in my teens and my early 20s, it was the canoe on the back lake or the back stream or river that got me into those places where I could find the fishing game.
Yeah, but the point was to get to fishing game.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's that canoe is the ideal vessel for that, and that's still my mindset. So when you talk about going on remote trips, I'm looking for the fishing places. Mm-hmm. I'm not looking for the hardship. For one thing, at this age, I don't feel like I have anything to prove. Like, people ask about the meanest link or the Brent run, whatever.
Yep.
I did have some drive to do that when I was younger. I did want to do that, or regretted not doing it. Now at this stage, it's not about ego. It's not about trying to prove who I am. Mm-hmm. It's just being comfortable with who I am in my position, and I don't feel the need to test myself anymore, I guess.
That's a great piece of advice, and I think that's something that a lot of people, you learn to keep in perspective, but it's always something to be reminded of. Mm-hmm. We joke about it a lot at the office, because you see a lot of trippers coming in, going out, people coming in looking for different boats for different needs, and we often sometimes joke with those customers, you know, like, how much punishment do you want to sign yourself up for? Right. Really, you know, like, do you really want that heavy boat if you have visions of doing the meanest link? Yeah. You know, or if you're going to do the meanest link, have you put in a consideration to paring down your gear? Or, you know, is that something that you should be doing solo? And not that we're going to tell anyone how they should spend their time in the outdoors, but just from an enjoyment perspective. I mean, the objective is always to enjoy your time in the outdoors, and that's it comes with experience, you know. But it's funny to hear you say that you know you're going to those fish and game spots, but get there in the most efficient way possible for your own sake.
Yeah, absolutely, and that brings up another point about being in shape to do that. So part of the gear is not to overburden yourself unless you're living. Like, I physically adapted to the outdoors more than the average person, and more than I've been as an average person over the last, say, 20 years prior to this. To expect to be able to go out on a weekend with 100 pounds of gear in an 80-pound canoe and not injure myself, or at least not have a worse time than I could have had if I had a lighter gear and less equipment to deal with. So that comes, if I'm doing a long spring canoe trip, you're out of shape in the spring. It doesn't matter what I do around here. I can carry logs all day long. But you asked me to sprint, across a portage or to carry a canoe on my back. It's a completely different thing. Or paddle all day long and you get joints that are sore. So you have to take care of those things. So I would, before a long canoe trip in the spring, I'll put canoe pack like that on my back, and I'll actually load it up, in this case, with logs. Or in the past, I'd use weights, and I'd go for long walks.
Yeah, training.
Yeah.
Dry land training.
Training, yeah. And then the gear, you got to. I've got spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets on my computer for all my gear. I've got everything I own listed that I would take on a trip, and I pare it down and match it up based on its weight.
Yeah.
My food, I know how many calories per ounce I can get out of all these different food types. So I'll put together my meal plan so that on a 10-day trip, I've got that little earth sack that carries all of my food.
Wow. You get it all into that, just that?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, those all come with experience, and lessons learned. And it's that's a very thoughtful way of putting it, having a spreadsheet and making sure that you go about it the right way. Because, carrying all that gear, one thing that I always joke about with is it doesn't matter how much time you go canoe tripping. We hear it from trippers all the time. Is like your first portage of the season, it can be 200 meters, and you can have a light boat.
Yeah.
That 200 meters is an eternity, and you're huffing and puffing when you get there, and I get reminded of that every time. We're about to go out this weekend, and I know I have a 250 meter uphill portage through a riverbed that's all rocks, and I call it an ankle breaker, because it can be, and we did it a bunch of times this summer, and I was reminded, like, okay, you got to get 5 or 10 more pounds out of this pack next time you come back here. Make sure you're wearing good footwear if you're going through this riverbed. Be smart, be safe. But the more you do it, and someone who's done it as much as you have, obviously, then you end up with a spreadsheet that allows you to do that efficiently. Yeah,
and you can do your research if you don't have the experience. And people have asked me for it, and I've shared that spreadsheet. And it's researching the gear. You can find the gear reviews on YouTube or anywhere else.
Well, even the videos that guys like you do. It's a great resource, and we hear feedback about that. Just for people, what do I need when I go out there? What do other people use? What are good tricks, little things that I can learn from these guys, and that all helps, right? The objective is for everyone to have fun outside.
Yeah. Well, one of the solo things is, I get a lot of questions, you see it on the forums a lot, about how do you deal with being alone for that amount of time and feel comfortable and all that stuff. And like experience with those canoe trips and your gear, it's just getting out and doing it and slowly introducing yourself to it so you get used to it before you embark on a 10-day solo trip to somewhere that you don't know. You got to get comfortable in the woods. You have to. You can't be afraid of every noise. You can't be afraid of bears and wolves and everything else. You need to learn about those animals, about all the threats. Where are the snakes in Ontario that are venomous? Where are the threats? And then you educate yourself about those threats to the point where you're so comfortable with them that it's no longer on the forefront.
Well, I completely agree, and I think that's the beauty of having so much information available to everyone now, is that it is really quick to figure that stuff out. If you're going to go out and experience the outdoors or go canoe tripping, and obviously I recommend everyone should, and you probably do too, is just it doesn't take a lot of time to go on those forums or to go on and find those videos and learn those little tricks, so that on your first time in Algonquin, there isn't a big surprise when you hear the wolves howl at night, or maybe some of the fishing lures that you should bring or not bring, depending on where you're going and what fish are in the lake. So all that stuff comes full circle. And speaking of full circle, I know you've got work to do before the end of the day. The sun's gonna set here. I got a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
You've done a lot in the 2.5 years that you've had this. I know you've talked a little bit about, your future with this and with YouTube and all that stuff. What's next for you? What's My Self Reliance gonna be in 2 years or 5 years time?
Yeah, I have to expect that YouTube is not a forever thing. I'm enjoying the content creation. I'm enjoying sharing this world with people, and I think going back to why people are attracted to this is that there is that want for self-reliance. There's the want to return to nature. There's therefore then the protection of nature as more and more people want to experience it, or just as the population continues to increase. So from there's a conservation perspective that I haven't shared enough of, I think. So I want to start talking more about that, preserving these places, using the resources responsibly. As far as the monetization of my lifestyle. I think could be courses at some point. If I feel like the security issue can be managed, I would like to have people here and then have demonstration courses or workshops or something, some educational component that's not online. It could be producing more, if there's different platforms to share. I'll keep researching, and maybe there's another platform I can do this again on or share this on. So there's that opportunity. There's the I could create movies of the life. So there's a lot of.
There's no shortage of things for you to do in the future.
Writing. Like people are asking for a cookbook, which I will probably have out in 2020 by the looks of it.
Honestly, I wish we had more time to talk about that, because I had all sorts of questions about your cooking. Because watching the Shawn James channel, I mean, it's amazing to watch. I don't know how you managed to pull it off here with the resources you have and how good you put those meals together. But that also brings me to, the Shawn James part of this. I mean, My Self Reliance is one thing, Shawn James is another. You as a person, I mean, obviously the content you're creating is so tied to who you are, but what are your goals for the next few years? Is it, like you said, to continue to build and promote this lifestyle and keep putting word out through new mediums?
So there's I think the people envision themselves living in a cabin in the woods to escape from society, and that's forevermore where they're going to be if they could do that thing, be satisfied with that. I don't think it's just me or some people. I think everybody would get restless. There's very few people that would be totally content, given opportunities to do otherwise, but be content to sit in one place and just stay at this cabin, for example, do nothing but explore what's around here on foot. To me, I've always considered this a cheap base camp to live life from. So I see this as a place to live cheaply, live closer to nature and understand this, but also it's really just a foundation for an outdoor lifestyle that's more adventurous. So I see myself ending up in other places, not moving away from this area, but certainly exploring more of the world, the natural world, but also with family.
Well, those are great perspectives, Shawn, and it's you seem very content with what you're doing, and as well you should be, and you can obviously tell how much it kind of nourishes your soul to do these things. So I want to thank you for taking the time and sitting down with us. I really appreciate it. Always the opportunity to come out here to the cabin is something that we all treasure, to be able to do this. So thank you so much. I can't thank you guys enough for letting us do this, and hopefully I'll be back to the cabin soon, and we'll talk about your canoe trip.
Yeah, do that, and you'll have to come out and help with the next phase of the longhouse again too.
Absolutely. Always we'll say yes to that. Thanks a lot, Shawn. Appreciate it.
Thanks.